We have a girl who bought unfrozen Panda Express onto an international flight, and a playboy who, when asked if he was a one woman man, literally replied, I could be. Welcome back to Socially Single. Today we're going to be bringing down Aviva, who's 26 from Arizona, and Stig, who is known as Erlen Dwayne, his real name, 30 from Belize. And of course, this is part of my series going over 90 day couples before the 90 days and before the tell, so that way you can learn more about the couples and understand maybe my thoughts and opinions that you may just not have heard from anywhere else. All right, so I will be very honest. I was a Stig fan, not in the sense of his music, because I didn't know who he was before the show, but I was a Stig fan with the way that he handled himself for the most part throughout the season. So I actually thought that this is one of the more less produced couples of the season, and I thought that they had one of the most authentic takes. Not saying the most authentic, but a more authentic take compared to what we've seen previously or from some other couples. And I appreciate when it's just like, while it can be boring, it can be slow. I like a little bit more of a natural, organic take where it's a bit more documentary like versus production trying to make it like more um, entertaining with their antics. So that part I feel like I appreciate it as it relates to Stig and Aviva. So let's gonna get the introduction out of the way. So Aviva, she's an American. She lives in Arizona. She's a dental hygienist, if I'm not mistaken, or assistant of some sorts. And she said herself that she was just born to be a passenger princess. And you know that means that you, as your passenger princess, is just going to sit here and I'm going to go with the flow. Like, I am chill. She's very laid back. And she just goes with the tide. And so we don't really get to know a lot about Aviva's like personality, who she is. We're not introduced to any of her friends. The only person we're really introduced to is her aunt Spring, who is relevant because her aunt had been was currently going to divorce or had just divorced her husband of like 20 and 30 years, who's also from Belize. And she lived in Belize with her husband. And the reason why they broke up is because she's divorcing him because he was apparently a serial cheater. So Aunt Spring's home thing is, I've been there, I've literally done that, I've lived this, I'm back here. I don't want you to repeat my same mistakes. I don't want you to fall for someone who's gonna take you the same stuff. Of course, if monogamy is what you're looking for. So we don't really kind of get to know a whole lot about the rest of her family, or if she has any close friends. And of course, I would expect a woman like Aviva, and let me be clear, I think Aviva is beautiful. I think she's a very pretty young lady. However, I just didn't get a lot into in regards to her personality and so much. So I will say, when you hear me mention the unfrozen Panda Express thing, it made me question something that I just think a lot of these young people, or a lot of people these days, tend to, there's a lack of critical thinking involved in what they're doing. So apparently Stig really loves American Chinese food. And he, in Panda Express, I don't know if I would consider that to be the Chinese food that I'm thinking about when I want Chinese food or Asian cuisine, but I like me some Panda Express every now and then. And I will say, why would you? She left it in the styrofoam plate, and she left it on the styrofoam plate. She put it in a reusable bag, and her flight to Belize was an overnight flight. So she bought it the night before she left. Um, and I'm like, the easiest thing to do would have been to simply put it in the freezer in a pretty airtight container. Um, Maybe even cover it with some aluminum foil parchment paper to even prevent frost from getting in there. But I'm getting too deep. And when you have it frozen in a separate container, you then could have put it in your bag, put it in your suitcase and try with it, and you could have just reheated it. No, she said that she sat on the flight with this stinking, nasty ass food that clearly would not have been healthy to eat, just to prove to him that she's about that life and she's willing to kind of give him what he wants. I had questions then about Aviva's choices, to be honest. So that kind of, I need to move on because I'm going to a tangent, and that really kind of got me early on, to be honest. Okay, so um, I think that as relates to Stig is apparently a very well known artist. I add to in Belize, according to what I've seen on at least on some of the Reddits, to where if you were in Belize and you live there, then it's a very good chance that you are well aware who Stig is. So he has a lot of notoriety in that country, and of course, I definitely have heard of him, but I never heard of him. I don't know if I've heard of any international artists, honestly, or artists that are at least from other countries and solely perform in those countries. And typically in America, we tend to set, I would argue, a standard for what entertainment and music is for the rest of the world in many ways. So we kind of share more, but we don't really know what is locally famous. So I'm not here to bash his success as an artist. He seems to have had certain level of success, and more power to him. And I'll be honest, it seemed like when Aviva was there, she wasn't pulling out her pocketbook to pay for a damn thing. He had already had everything lined up, so I'm not saying he's rich and all that, but he seems to be someone who has some resources, unlike some of the other artists that have been on the show, and he seems to be doing just fine for himself. So kudos to him for sure. We see that he has billboards and ads and all that. So a little bit about Stig additionally is that he claims that he's a playboy who's been looking to settle down and then advance his career, and he did not shy away from him being a fuckboy. Let's just be honest. He was promiscuous. He's hurt people. He's broken some hearts. He's in a certain lifestyle, and this is echoed by his friends and his manager. That hey, Stig is someone who I would be very surprised if he's ready to really if he's really ready to what's the word, settle down, because he's 30 years old and he has had a certain history. So to change that and to try to change that and still be committed to this lifestyle where a lot of the writing, you're getting so much attention from these girls for Aviva, um, it, not many people had a lot of faith in that, to be honest. So that's a little bit about Stig in terms of that. I do think that, um, Aviva, as even though I question her situation, I do think I appreciate Unspring for trying to educate her and inform her, because it really was a good foundation from what we're going to inevitably see at the end of the season, and most importantly at the tell-all, where I hope really get into what really happened. So throughout this whole season, from what they showed us, we didn't see I'll be honest, we didn't see a whole lot of them. The only highlight that we saw in the situation really was Unspring taking her ass over there to Belize and then quote unquote confronting Stig on some rumors and photos that she had of him leaving a concert with the girl, and even to the point to where apparently there's another girl there who calls Aunt Spring auntie or whatever, and her friend claimed to be dating Stig. And so it really wasn't very strong, overwhelming evidence. I'll be honest, I think Stig overall, handle it the way I would expect a guy to handle it, honestly. Especially some of the things. We meet his father and all that. And I do like that we did meet some of Stig's friends, and we met his manager. We see his manager a couple of different times. And then another highlight was when Aviva went to one of his shows earlier on in their meeting and the visit, she got insecure. Right. And I think that I do think that if you're gonna be dating someone who is on the forefront, particularly in a way in which they're selling their likeness and they're making money off of the likes and desires of, of their fans and people, and then requires them to be part of the clubs and to, have a certain persona. It does take someone a little bit of insecurity. I mean, some self assurance and self security to really be comfortable with that, knowing that, hey, you go do you, and then I know you can come to me. And of course, that's not all on in this situation on Aviva. It's up to Stig as well when he's dating these women to understand that, hey, I don't like it when like these artists like, oh well, it's a lifestyle. Every time I get somebody, you gotta be, you can't be worried about this and you can't be worried about that. Well, to a certain extent, I believe that is true. To where you need to understand and know your audience, right? As to who you're choosing to date with and what they do for their livelihood. On the same token, though, it is up to that person, like in this case, Stig, to ensure that he's making Aviva feel a certain kind of way and feel respected to where she can trust him in that realm. There was an incident where she tuned out during the show because she asked him to not do a certain song, because it was about another another woman from his past, and that's something that wouldn't bother me. But she feels about her. I don't think that she had enough sway or authority in their relationship at its current point to say don't do this song versus that song if it's that people, his fans are expecting on one hand. But on another hand, if an accommodation could have been made, or if he could have done something specifically extra or specific to really make Aviva feel special and feel seen while he was there, that I think that he should have done that, versus it's just being she's never been in a situation before and she's on her phone. Well, why is she on her phone? Is there a security thing there? Why isn't she with your friends who are supposedly they're hyping you? Well, why isn't she with them hyping them? She's just in the middle of the crowd. And that's just how I took it in terms of, okay, we're already kind of seeing how this may or may not turn out. But besides the show stuff, I think they seem to have a really good candid relationship. He definitely tends to. There is a mature aspect of that I think that we saw of Stig throughout the season, where yes, there was the playboy. Yes, he spotted some bullshit, but at the same time, I think that he's likable and he has people around him, and quite frankly, as it relates to his talk with Unspring, I would argue that he handled it relatively well. Now, I'm withholding what the last episode or two in the rumors over the past couple of weeks that have came out. I even shouldn't call them rumors, just things that have gone viral regarding Stig and what he has done. I'm withholding it. How I feel about that at the moment, only because I really want to kind of go over to like I'm trying to describe just how I felt about them throughout the season from what we've seen on the show. So, we also got a little bit more in the Stig in reference from his manager. When his manager, when they come about, Stig is, he has taken his previous ex, and of course, Viva now to the concert, to the station, and when she's there, his friends and the manager are like, this Negro's a playboy. Like, his lifestyle, and all that is not really conducive to relationship in so many words. And on top of that, they've had an incident where his previous relationship, which would be pivotal in a moment, was pretty damaging to his career, at least at that time. And so, and his management, his friend or his manager, maybe both, I'm not sure, was like, for real, the ex from Texas, that was an emotional breakdown for him. When they broke up, whether it was she left him or he left her, whatever, they lost projects, he canceled shows, he, was really, really hurt by that. And that put a light bulb off in Aviva's head at that moment at the studio session, like, well, if he was so hurt by this and he didn't tell me the full story also about what had gone on with them, is he really ready to be in a relationship with me, and does he like me for me, or am I just a rebound chick, right? Which I think is only fair for her to question, which then lets you know, okay, maybe you're not as much of a dunce as maybe with the this person. Maybe you do know a little something, Aviva. And so I think that it kind of got her thinking in terms of certain things, but I don't think it was short lived. um, because he'll explain it away, she'll have a little moment, and then she's ultimately wanting to believe what she wants to believe, and her goal is, of course, which I just don't understand the whole goal of I want to meet this person for the very first time. On this trip, I also want to get married, and then I also want to get pregnant. I just don't get the rush into that. I don't think I would ever understand that. I understand the level of I've made a bond with somebody, we have shared certain moments, and of course, we have gotten to the point of, I really want to, explore a life with you. Maybe the married part, but it's the level of, oh, I gotta get a baby right now. When you haven't even settled other shit. And that's the shit I don't like for people who want to be quick to have babies, but you haven't really, not saying there's a perfect time to have a baby no matter what your tax bracket is. I just don't know the fact that you haven't really settled some core issues that could really be bigger issues in the future, and you're willing to try to have a kid so quick and expose them to these issues, therefore adding unnecessary complexities into their young lives on top of whatever else is going to come up inevitably in their lives or in your lives. Let it on for them. It just doesn't make sense to me, but I would love to hear your view in the comments about that. Are you someone who's like, oh my God, my first thing is I want to get married and I gotta have a baby. Like I have to do it with, hopefully I can do it within 12 months. But usually that's something I've noticed. I obviously see a lot that we see a lot from our Fiance that said they want to come over here, that goes to get married, of course, and have a baby out. And so, and one thing I found interesting was this: what we did not get a lot of in the middle of the season when we were looking at them was I didn't hear too much about her living in Belize or him living in the US. It was very much edited like a 90-day before the 90s situation, I think, in my opinion, should be to the extent of let's see how we deal with each other. Let's get to know each other, spend some time. Let's, test the waters out and do all that because they definitely did to do in the very first night. And then once this trip is to the end, then we can then discuss how we're going to move forward. If I missed that, someone drop in the comments and let me know that when it happened, but I just don't remember that being a major point of discussion amongst this particular couple in this throughout the season. Alrighty, so all right, now discussing a bit about the online rumors and all that. So apparently, when it comes to the discussions regarding Aviva living in Belize, on that note, just like her aunt did, not Aunt Spring did, at the very end, he surprised her by saying, "Are you going to file the visa?" And then her response was like, "Well, I thought that you were going to be filing it for me to live over here." And I'll be honest, that made more sense to me, and why I definitely think Aviva's that's more true. To the sense from what we have been seeing, it definitely looks as if he had more of the career and success and was sustaining himself pretty well in Belize. So, and with her not necessarily having a job and her being younger, 60 years she's junior, it is easier for her to give up her life in the U.S. and just move to Belize like her aunt did. And we don't know the aunt's full story background, but some of that. So when he kind of said that, it was like, oh, where does this come from? Now, to be fair, Stig early on did mention that his ex lived in Texas and that he had family out in Texas. And he even had mentioned in his confessions earlier on when I was watching it that he had been traveling to the States before. So it's not as if Stig it does not have a way to be in the States and does not come to the States. He's not. So for me, I would not have classified Stig as someone who was just looking for a green card, because there's so many ways to get into the States, and for someone like him who already had money to be traveling, not only to get a visitor's visa, but to also to be traveling and spending time here and then already having family here. I don't think he necessarily needs Aviva to do that, and or needs to do that. But I do think that this show for him was a way to expand his platform, which may backfire. I don't know, but I don't think that he needed her necessarily to get into the States as he had visited. It seems like seemingly multiple times in the past, at the very least in Texas. So, but we have to accept the fact that a lot of times certain people that come onto this show are looking to advance their notoriety in some way, right? And so it's kind of turned more into that, and it has to be a beneficial aspect for them to come onto the show versus what, back in my day, people got on these shows more so to tell their story and, may have gotten a small stipend for it, but it was a little bit more authentic, as I said in the past. So I think that when it comes to Stig, that's kind of where it was. When we get to the end, right? And it's discovered that after they were done filming the season, we find out that when Viva came home, shortly thereafter, Stig actually came and spent time with her in Arizona. They went to Las Vegas to spend time together. They also went to Texas. She hung out with his family. He, and all that. And it seemed like a really good extension of the trip. And then apparently Stig changed when he got back to Belize. He was distant. He was talking to her no more. And they broke up via text. And then obviously Aviva was blindsided. She was very, very hurt. And to tell all, we get maybe a glimpse or the illusion that maybe she was talking to someone else, or got messages for some other person, and she was entertaining another guy or guys. We don't know at this point. I'm hoping. We got Sean Robinson, so I'm hoping that we really get deeper into that. Given we didn't get a lot for them in the personally, really individually, in my opinion, this season. I hope that in Tell All we kind of get everything that we had not gotten throughout the season. But it was interesting because understand that before she left, Stig proposed to Aviva, on the mountain of the Mayans, I believe it was, and it was a very beautiful moment for them. They had the time to spend time together, minus him trying to do stuff for his career and studio sessions. And after Spring left, it was just them spending time and focusing on themselves and really just enjoying each other and being a young couple. But I'm looking forward to see where this goes. Alessa Aviva was definitely super, super hurt. 90 Day Fiance producers ain't shit when they focus on her hands. In that last episode of her confessional, I do find it interesting that they thought it well enough to take all their equipment and go to Arizona, I'm presuming, and film her confessional with her crying and all that. So I really wonder if what happened between them to get to this point. Y'all may or may not have heard that Stig, after the last episode, had released some sort of diss track, really, really coming hard on Aviva and Spring and maybe showing his true colors. I'm not going to show all of that and, pull all it up because it wasn't that great, if I'm being honest, and it wasn't, radiant. And if he calls himself a lyricist, then I'm no lyricist, but neither is he. From what he put out as what he called his diss track about this whole situation. I will say that surprised me though. I to see I was rooting. I was rooting for Aviva instead. I thought it was going to be a really good situation. And I know what every couple has their shit. Let's be honest. Every couple has their shit. Every couple has some red flags. It's never a fairy tale. And unfortunately, if it is a fairy tale, at this point in 2026, we're asking the question, where's the issues? What's going on? Like it just can't be that real, right? And so I think that as it relates to Stig, I was really shocked that it was such a stark turn. And I wonder if it's true. Was it true that he found out that Aviva was cheating, and that allowed him to be distant? And if that's the case, then if you're as confident about yourself and secure about yourself as Stig may claim to be, then why didn't you stop it in the den? Why did it end up with her having to reach out to you and then her following up to you and then you're just, doing all this? You're 30 something, you're 30 years old man. And in my opinion, if you're done with somebody and you found out something that really hurts you, then you need to address it and you need to end things in a mature manner, right? Especially when you're assuming the role of he is older than her. He's had more experiences to her. He's been through a heartbreak that has been disclosed for us to know about that was devastating for him. So if this is true that Aviva was in the wrong and you're just responding by doing you, either you're being petty with posting all the girls and all that stuff and so forth, or we have not been made aware that you did end things with her, and what they showed on the show was just some sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Some sort of leftover stuff that just popped up that she's showing you, and then she's protecting her own secrets. We'll see. I'm hoping that we find out the tell-all. I think, and here's where I think. As I sit here in my thoughts, not having no one to talk to for the most part, all the time, I feel like that Stig is not really ready to settle down in the way in which he knows he wants to commit to somebody. And because of that, when he did the trips out here with Aviva, I feel like that he got scared. I think that he got scared. I think he got insecure. And he doesn't seem to necessarily have a bad life in Belize. So I think that when he saw how real things were going to get with Aviva and experience and maybe his family even liking Aviva possibly. And again, we don't know shit about shit, but I'm allowing myself to make an ass of myself and just assume some things. I really do think that he was scared of committing and was scared that it could be something serious for him, and he wasn't honest with himself that he was not over the ex, which would have been meant that he's open to being vulnerable and open to being happy or hurt again with Aviva. And so therefore his response was to do some fuckboy shit. And and really be a coward and have Aviva be the reason that they're breaking up. That is my completely unsupported. I have nothing nothing that can pull up to really kind of prove that point. But that's what it seemed like to me, if I'm being honest, that he really wasn't ready for this type of relationship, and therefore he took the antics that he did, and of course he realized he wanted to focus more on his career and do so in whatever way possible. Again, I do think the response that he did after everything wrapped up was pretty brash, and he had super crass lyrics, and so he could be hurt. I look forward to their storyline wrapping up and us getting the unknown details in the tell-all for sure, especially since we didn't get a whole ton about them throughout the season. Anyway, that's all I got about Aviva and Stig. I don't have any more. And then Aviva is not pregnant, thankfully, so she should not have any additional ties. This is the reason why you should be rushing to get pregnant by nobody until they are very sure and you are very sure y'all have really kind of aligned with things. Like I said, Javon and Anna, I think that they treated a line near the end after the cameras were gone, and I'm not saying that a kid is going to be the best thing for them either. They just seemingly seem to be on a more on a better page that just might work out for them, versus me having so much hope for Aviva and Stig, and it's just clearly I don't think there's any reconciliation that can really be had between these two. So we'll see how what's gonna vote for them, right? Don't forget to hit the like button if you don't mind. We really appreciate that to support my brand new channel that took me forever to have the confidence to start. And subscribe and stay socially single. I'll catch you in the next review. Bye, y'all.